All right, so welcome everyone to this deep dive. We're going to be heading straight to the heart of Africa's AI revolution. I'm so excited.
Should be interesting.
Yeah, and get this, our focus today is a brand new white paper published just last week on February 3rd, 2025. It's from Smart Africa.
Okay, yeah.
And it's called AI Readiness and Strategic Initiatives for Smart Africa. This paper, let me tell you, it's a real eye-opener.
Definitely, it's not just some dry tech report. It's more like a roadmap for how an entire continent, a whole continent, is getting ready for a future that's really going to be driven by artificial intelligence.
Yeah, that's a great point. So Smart Africa, okay, I know everyone knows they've been making headlines, a lot of noise about leading Africa's digital transformation. But what exactly are they doing to make sure the whole continent is AI ready? Like, specifically.
So Smart Africa has this laser focus on driving economic growth. They want innovation and social transformation. And all of this through, the strategic use of technology.
Right.
And actually, this isn't brand new for them. They released a blueprint back in 2021 called AI for Africa. So this new white paper we're looking at today is like an evolution building on that original vision.
Oh, interesting.
And what's really fascinating to me is how they're using the International Monetary Fund's AI Preparedness Index, or AIPI,
AIPI, right.
as like, a benchmark to measure their progress.
Oh, I see. So it's kind of like they're holding themselves accountable to like a global standard for AI readiness?
Exactly, like a global report card. The AIPI looks at countries, assesses them based on four key dimensions.
Okay.
So there's digital and infrastructure, obviously, then human capital and labor market policies, then innovation and economic integration, and finally, regulation and ethics.
That's a lot.
It is, but it's important. These dimensions together, they create like a framework for understanding, for figuring out what it really takes to not just, develop AI, but to use it in a way that is effective and responsible.
Right. Responsible AI, that's key.
Absolutely.
So let's start with digital infrastructure, like the foundation. I mean, it's pretty obvious that AI needs huge amounts of data, which means you need a really strong infrastructure to handle it all, right?
You got it. AI, it's a data monster. Without the right infrastructure, it's like, I don't know, trying to run a marathon on a dirt road.
That's a good one.
Smart Africa knows this, though. They've been hard at work, like laying the groundwork. Some of their initiatives are really ambitious, like take their Smart Africa Broadband 2025 strategy.
Oh, yeah, I heard about that. Isn't that the one where they're working with Senegal to boost internet penetration across the continent?
That's the one. They're aiming to get internet penetration above 40%.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge step towards, closing that digital divide. But it's not just about getting people online.
Right.
It's also about making sure the network can actually handle the demands of AI, all that data flying around.
So what else are they doing besides expanding broadband access?
Well, a lot, actually. They've got this bulk purchase initiative to try and bring down internet costs, make it more affordable. They're also working with Djibouti on the Data Center and Cloud for Africa project.
Okay.
The goal there is to make sure that, data is processed and stored on the continent.
Right.
And then there's the One Africa Network project. They're partnering with Gabon on this one, and that's all about keeping internet traffic local, within Africa.
Interesting.
And this is good for a couple of reasons. It can make internet speeds faster, but it also contributes to data sovereignty.
Data sovereignty. Now, hold on. Explain that one. Is that like the idea of keeping African data within Africa?
Exactly. In the age of AI, data sovereignty is becoming more and more important. It's about African nations having control over their own data, making sure that they decide how it's used, not someone else.
Makes sense. So is Smart Africa taking this seriously?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Good. Anything else in terms of like notable infrastructure projects?
For sure. There's this initiative called Intra-Africa Connectivity with Guinea. They're trying to create this continent-wide mesh network.
Okay, a mesh network. And that
Basically, it can make the internet more resilient, less reliant on connections that have to go outside of Africa.
So it's like a kind of a backup system in case something happens to the main lines.
Yeah, exactly. And then, of course, there's security. Huge concern, especially when you're talking about, sensitive data. They partnered with Côte d'Ivoire to develop the Pan-African Cybersecurity Blueprint.
Right.
And that actually led to the creation of the African Network of Cybersecurity Authorities, ANCA, they call it.
ANCA. Okay. It sounds like a lot. Like they're really trying to build a strong foundation for AI.
Absolutely. They're attacking the infrastructure challenge from all sides, which
Yeah.
is important because without that strong foundation, the whole AI ecosystem, it could just crumble.
Right.
But it's not just about cables and servers, though, right?
Right.
It's also about people, the people who are going to use AI, the people who are going to build it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And that brings us to the second dimension of the AIPI, human capital and labor market policies.
Yeah.
Because you can have the best technology in the world, but if you don't have people who know how to use it, it's practically useless.
Totally. AI is only as good as the people behind it, the ones building it, the ones using it.
Right.
And Smart Africa gets that. That's why they're putting a lot of energy into skills development. One of their big initiatives is the Smart Africa Digital Academy, SADA.
SADA, okay.
They've already trained over 10,000 policymakers. Can you believe that? Across the continent.
Wow, 10,000 policymakers. So they're really focusing on making sure government officials understand, the latest digital trends, what's happening.
Exactly. They realize that, if the government understands and supports this, it creates a much better environment for AI to grow. But they're not just stopping at the top level.
So what are they doing to, get young people, the next generation, excited about AI?
So they have the Smart Africa Youth Chapter, all about giving young people the digital skills they're going to need. They've trained over 2,000 already. And some of their success stories, they're pretty amazing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, like their Cybersecurity Innovation Center in Côte d'Ivoire, 70% of their students, 70%, have jobs in the tech sector within 3 months of finishing the program.
Wow, that's incredible. So it's not just theory. They're actually helping people find jobs.
Exactly. Creating this pipeline of talent that can actually, drive innovation, contribute to Africa's digital economy.
Yeah.
It's about empowering young people to be part of this AI revolution, not just watching from the sidelines.
It's really encouraging to see them putting so much into education. But are there, challenges in this area?
There are always challenges. One of the big ones is scaling these initiatives to reach more people.
Right. So it's about making sure everyone has access no matter where they live, what their background is.
Yeah, exactly. Bridging the digital divide, it's not just internet access, it's making sure education and training is available to everyone. And, there's another thing, the STEM gender gap.
Yeah, women in tech, that's something we can't forget about. We need to make sure women are represented in the AI field.
For sure. And Smart Africa gets that. They're really working to promote gender equality in these fields. They believe that a diverse workforce, men and women, it's essential for real innovation.
So they're building the infrastructure, they're training the workforce. It sounds like Smart Africa is really setting the stage for this AI-powered future in Africa. But how do they make sure AI actually flourishes there?
Good question. That's where the third dimension of that AIPI comes in. Innovation and economic integration. This is about creating an environment where AI can really take off.
Okay, this is getting good, but we got to take a quick break. We'll be back in a minute to dive into that. Don't go anywhere. All right, so we're back and ready to dig into this third dimension of the AIPI, innovation and economic integration.
Yeah.
Sounds like a pretty big topic to tackle. Where do we even start with that?
Well, Smart Africa, they're not afraid to dream big. They've got all these projects, a ton of them, to really encourage innovation. Over 37, actually.
Wow, 37 projects. That's a lot.
Right. And they cover all sorts of things, from developing these super secure digital ID systems to building this network of cloud and data centers all across the continent.
37 projects. That's a lot to keep track of. How do they make sure that everything's actually working together? How do they avoid just, duplicating efforts?
That's a good question. And that's where the Continental Project Coordination Committee comes in. Think of them I don't know, the conductors of an orchestra. They make sure all these different projects are playing the same tune, working towards the same vision. They're all about making sure efforts are streamlined and they're having the biggest impact.
Right, coordination, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Especially when you're talking about something as big and complicated as building a whole AI ecosystem. But what about the smaller scale stuff? Are they doing anything to help startups, entrepreneurs, get involved?
Oh, absolutely. They know that startups, they're the heart of innovation. They even partnered with Tunisia to develop this Startup Acts blueprint.
And that is?
It's all about creating policies that encourage entrepreneurship. Makes it easier for people to start businesses, to grow them.
So it's about making the whole environment in Africa more friendly to startups.
Exactly. And on top of that, to really support these startups, they created the Smart Africa network of incubators and accelerators.
So, yeah,
they call it.
SANIA, got it.
And this network gives startups all kinds of resources, mentorship, connections, the stuff they need to really take off.
So they're thinking big picture, infrastructure, and then supporting the next generation of innovators. Pretty cool. But what about like between countries? Is Smart Africa doing anything to, encourage countries to work together?
Oh, for sure. Seamless integration, that's a key part of their whole vision.
Hmm.
They get that a fragmented digital landscape, that's just going to slow things down. So to deal with that, they set up the Smart Africa Trust Alliance, SATA.
SATA. Okay, another acronym. What's that all about?
So SATA is focused on building trust and getting different systems to work together across borders. This means supporting good digital governance, making sure data can flow between countries securely. They're even looking at digital ID portability.
Hold on, digital ID portability. So you're saying, like, in the future, there's a chance you could have a digital ID that works in any African country.
That's the goal. Think about it. Traveling, accessing services, doing business all across borders without having to deal with a ton of different rules and paperwork. That's what they're working towards.
Wow, that would be huge. Especially for businesses that work in a lot of different African countries. Sounds like Smart Africa is really trying to create one big unified digital market for Africa.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
But okay, what about the rules? For all of this, AI is powerful, everyone knows that. But like any powerful tool, it needs like clear guidelines, regulations, right? Especially when it comes to, ethics, making sure it's used the right way.
You're absolutely right. And that leads us right into the fourth and final dimension of the AIPI, regulation and ethics. It might be the most important part of getting ready for AI. And Smart Africa knows that. They're definitely not shying away from this.
So how are they approaching it? How are they making sure AI in Africa is developed responsibly, used the right way?
Well, one of the big things is that African Cybersecurity Authorities Network, ANCA, remember that? We talked about it earlier.
Yeah, the one that came out of that cybersecurity blueprint, right?
Exactly. And it's playing a key role in, trying to get all the different countries to agree on cybersecurity regulations and helping them build up their capacity to enforce those rules.
So it's about having like one set of rules for cybersecurity across the whole continent.
Yeah, precisely. And with AI, this is really important because these systems, they often deal with sensitive data and they can have a huge impact on society.
Right, right. But cybersecurity, that's just one part of AI regulation. What about the bigger ethical questions like how do they make sure AI is used fairly, that it doesn't make existing inequalities even worse?
Smart Africa is really emphasizing data sovereignty here. Remember, we talked about that. Making sure African nations have control over their own data.
Right, right.
That's key to preventing, exploitation and making sure that AI actually benefits African people, that it's not just benefiting foreign companies or government.
So it's about making sure AI empowers Africa, not the other way around. But how do they, put those principles into action? How do they actually make that happen?
They've created these data governance blueprints and guidelines that go along with the African Union Data Policy Framework.
Okay.
These blueprints, they lay out a framework for managing data responsibly. They make sure AI development is happening ethically.
So it's not just talk, they're actually putting these ideas into practice.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they're working directly with countries to help them implement these guidelines. For example, they helped Senegal and Ghana, both of them, develop their own national data strategies.
So it's a team effort, Smart Africa and the member states working together.
Exactly. It's about building this whole ecosystem for ethical, responsible AI development across the continent.
This is impressive. It seems like they're really addressing all four of those AIPI dimensions we talked about. They seem committed to getting Africa ready for AI, but have they run into any roadblocks, any potential problems they've identified?
Right.
Well, when you're trying to do something this big, there are always challenges. One of the big ones Smart Africa points out is making sure these regulations are actually adopted and enforced across all 40 member states.
Right, because Africa is a huge continent. So many different legal systems, different levels of development. It can't be easy to get everyone on the same page.
It's definitely complicated, but Smart Africa is committed to working with every single member state to make sure these regulations work and that everybody benefits from AI's potential.
So it's about setting clear guidelines, but also being flexible enough to adapt to different situations, right? Different countries.
Exactly. It's a tough balance. But Smart Africa believes that a harmonized approach, everyone working together, that's the key to having a successful AI ecosystem in Africa.
Wow. Okay, we've covered a lot. Infrastructure, skills development, regulation, ethics. It's pretty clear that Smart Africa is doing a lot to get Africa ready for this AI revolution. But what does all of this mean, like in the big picture? What are the main takeaways from all this?
Hmm. Let's take a moment to sort of sum up what we've learned and look at what Smart Africa is calling for in their white paper.
Okay, we're back. Ready to finish up our look at Smart Africa's plans for AI. We've talked infrastructure, skills, even regulations and ethics. It's a lot.
It is, but one thing that really sticks out to me is how they talk about, leapfrogging.
Leapfrogging,
Yeah, so it's not just about catching up to the rest of the world in AI. It's more about using tech to, skip over some of those traditional development stages, accelerate progress, you know?
Right, like skipping a step, going straight to the future.
Exactly. And it's smart. Africa has this chance to really shape AI in a way that works for them, for their people, their priorities.
Yeah, that's important. It's not just about having the tech, it's about using it in a way that makes a real difference, right?
For sure. And Smart Africa makes that really clear in their paper. It's not just about developing AI because it's cool. It's about solving real problems, making a better future for all Africans.
So, what kind of impact are we talking about? Give me some examples.
Okay, so imagine healthcare in a remote village, right? And they have AI tools that can help diagnose diseases earlier.
Okay.
So treatment is more effective. Or think about agriculture. AI can help farmers be more efficient, grow more food, reduce waste.
So, food security.
Exactly. And then there's education. Imagine these learning platforms, personalized for each student, powered by AI.
Wow. It sounds kind of like science fiction. But it's possible if AI is developed the right way. That's the thing, isn't it? We've seen how powerful AI can be, but there are risks too, right?
Absolutely, no doubt about it. We've talked about this, but it's important. Smart Africa knows strong guidelines are needed, regulations too, to make sure AI is a force for good, not something that makes inequality worse.
Right. So it's about more than just the tech itself. It's about human values, making sure those are built in. How do we do that? How do we make sure AI is fair, transparent, accountable?
That's the big question, right? And Smart Africa, they're facing it head on. They want more transparency. How are these AI systems built? How are they used? People need to be able to see that. And they want ways to make sure people can hold these systems accountable if something goes wrong.
So it's not just about trusting the tech. It's about trusting the people, the organizations that are building it and using it.
Exactly. And Smart Africa is really pushing for a collaborative approach. Governments, businesses, researchers, even civil society, everyone has a role to play in making sure AI is developed ethically, inclusively.
And that brings us back to you, our listener. Smart Africa is making this case, saying Africa needs to be AI ready. But they also say it's a journey. Everyone has to be part of it. Yeah. So what do you think? Think Africa's in a good position to lead the way in ethical, equitable AI?
It's definitely an interesting time to be watching AI in Africa. Huge potential there, but it's going to take everyone working together to make sure it benefits everyone.
Couldn't agree more. And if this has you thinking, we really encourage you to check out Smart Africa's white paper. Lots of good stuff in there. Really makes you think about the future of AI in Africa.
Remember, the future isn't something that just happens. It's something we build. And how we develop and use AI now, that's going to shape the world we live in tomorrow. So stay curious, stay engaged, keep learning about AI and what it can do.
Great advice. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into AI readiness in Africa.